People ask me for recommendations as to what to watch as their first anime. The genre that I sort of tend to gravitate towards is, of course, shonen. Now, the reason for this is, for a start, there are quite a few amazing shonen animes. You've got, Attack on Titan, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, JJK, the list goes on and on. And secondly, the fact that once you've sort of finished one of these animes or mangas, let's say, there is a surplus of other ones that are very similar that you can just get into as well. You're not going to be searching for ages to find something that fits your likes if you've enjoyed the first recommendation, and it's sort of a very easy genre to get into. Now, maybe after this, you'll go into my personal favourite genre, which is seinen, which is basically just shonen anime or manga on crack. And they usually sort of have more adult themes involved, and as such are aimed more towards young adults to everyone after that, because they have a bit more violence or a message in it or something like that. However, after 5 or 6 years now of watching mostly shonen and seinen anime, with I'd probably say about a 70-30 split. Now, if I had anything to do with that, it'd be higher. However, all of the good seinen manga never seem to have any good adaptations, and the seinen anime that do exist, a lot of them aren't the best, or that's what I've discovered anyway. But after 4 or 5 years of watching those two specific genres, I decided maybe it's time to sort of venture into shoujo. It was something that had always sort of hung over my head for a while, and it had been recommended to me for ages and ages, but I just never did. Now, the reason for this is because I feel like there's a misconception around shoujo that I myself subscribe to, that it's all just crappy romance, that sort of slice of life stuff that you seem to get advertised to on TikTok if you're on anime TikTok, quote unquote. And whilst there are definitely some shoujo animes that are like that, and they're admittedly my guilty pleasure sometimes, it's not just that. The definition of shoujo manga, pulled here from Wikipedia, is an editorial category of Japanese comics targeting an audience of adolescent females and young adult women. Now, the reason that I think a lot of romance is, put into this genre is because, of course, there is a expectation or a sort of societal expectation that women enjoy romance and will consume romance, and as such, I think a lot of the shoujo manga that are aimed towards these young women are romance based. Now, that's not to say that every romance anime manga has to be shoujo, because there are certainly some really good shonen romance animes which surprised me. One of my favourite animes of all time, A Silent Voice, I didn't realise it was a shonen until I saw on my anime list. I was always convinced that it was going to be a shoujo, because why wouldn't it be with such a romantic subtext? And often I find that the lines between shoujo and shonen can get blurred sometimes, but that's what I want to talk about in this video. Now, I would recommend to anybody watching shonen, seinen, josei, anything, to sort of take that trip into shoujo, because I feel like by neglecting the genre you're really missing out on some really, really good pieces. And there are two that I would like to talk about today, in hopes to sort of maybe get you into that genre. The first one I'd like to talk about is Natsume's Book of Friends. Now, this is my personal favourite shoujo anime, and you'll see why, I assume. The story is about this guy called Takashi Natsume, hence the name of the anime, who basically can see ghosts, bear with me here, and he finds an old notebook that used to belong to his grandma, which has the names of these, ghosts that he can see, like specific ones. And he decides that, I'm going to give back the individual ghosts' names and in doing so, he encounters this guy called Madara. Now, I'm not talking, the guy from Naruto, surprisingly, or that would have been a surprising cameo, but instead this really fat cat that gets nicknamed Nyanko-sensei, and is somehow one of my favourite characters in fiction, which surprises me more every time I see him. But he basically wants the notebook because he thinks he can use it to become like some sort of evil lord or something, I assume, and so agrees to protect Takashi until that happens. And it just sort of details him giving these names back. But I find as the story goes on, it sort of focuses less on that, whilst it is still there, but also focuses on him sort of adapting to this new area he's moved to. We get flashbacks and it shows that he's sort of been like mistreated for most of his life, and we get to see him make friends, actually have a family, and it's really wholesome, and I think that's why it's my favourite shoujo anime. I mean, I don't want to say I do relate, but I think I do relate to him in the fact that he is a loner in a bit. I have friends, surprisingly. I mean, that might come as a shock to some, but it is kind of nice to see that this guy who has these supernatural powers and can probably be seen as a sort of hero or a god, etc., also struggles to make friends, and it's quite nice to sort of see that represented in an anime character, and that's why I'd recommend it to people. Like, it's just a wholesome story. There's never a point in it that I felt bored, and it is some of the best writing I've ever seen with regards to the sort of dynamic of friendship and things like that, so I definitely recommend it. And the second shoujo anime or manga that I'd like to talk about is one that is sort of renowned as being one of the best. I really enjoyed it, but I don't know if it squeezes past Natsume's Book of Friends for me, and that is Bananafish. Now, I mean, from the general plot description of it being set in the New York City in the 1980s, and it following this street gang leader called Lynx, as he uncovers a criminal conspiracy involving a mysterious drug called Bananafish that brainwashes its users. And whilst on this investigation, he encounters Eiji Okumura, a Japanese photographer's assistant, got there in the end, with whom he forms a close bond. Now, whilst that story sounds very simplistic, it is. You really should watch it, and I'm trying not to spoil because the story and plot are amazing. You get so many twists, so many turns, and it is just amazing from start to finish. But this is what I meant when I said earlier that the lines become blurred slowly, because you think criminal conspiracy and drugs and investigations and all these sort of buzzwords that are being thrown around, that it'd be more shonen based, because that's sort of what I'd associate with like teens liking. I don't know. However, one thing that I really like about the series, and one thing that it's praised for, is how, I mean, for a start, it represents a break from the romance-based stories of shoujo manga, and I think this is probably where the new and non-romance-based shoujo manga really originate from. But also the fact that it tackles issues like homoeroticism. I say issues like I'm against it. I'm not. But obviously, at the time when this was released in, I believe, the late 1980s, obviously how it tackled it throughout the anime and the manga, and how it does it in a very mature way, and how overall it was probably one of the biggest inspirations for sort of BL genre of manga, and that may be a curse or a blessing depending on who you speak to, but I think it was really great. I mean, having watched it when I did, I didn't realise how old it was, and how long it had been since it originally was serialised, and to think, wow, that these issues were being tackled back then is sort of mind-blowing from a shoujo manga. But I mean, all I would say is it's amazing. So is Natsume's Book of Friends, and I'd recommend it to either a shonen fan, a seinen fan, or somebody just getting into manga. Maybe break the cycle and start with shoujo and move your way after that. Although you may fall down the trashy shoujo pipeline, but I have no responsibility for that. I hope that I've convinced you to maybe start watching shoujo as a genre, or at least sort of break into it slightly, or maybe just give one of these two a chance. I will say Natsume's Book of Friends is extremely long, but it is extremely worth it. If you have enjoyed me talking about shoujo manga, please leave a like on the video and consider subscribing to what is, effectively the anime student's second channel. But hopefully uploads will be a bit more frequent on here than they are on the main channel. And I will see you all in the next video. Peace.